And welcome back to the public speaking course, part 2. Now, in the last part, we learned how to structure your speech and how to start writing and practicing your speech. Now, once your speech is actually done, we can actually start going over how to present your speech and how to actually bring out the best of your speech to the audience that you are presenting to. So now that you have your speech, the first step to do is to practice, right? If you have any mirrors or if you have any audience members or family members in your house, practice your speech with them and learn to focus on a couple of things. First, you want to focus on your tone. You want to make sure that when you talk, your tone of voice isn't just like a flat line. So, for example, if I were to talk monotonously, like in a flat line, it would be a little bit like this and it would sound so boring. If you wanted to give your speech some variety, if you wanted to make sure people listen to what you have to say, you have to vary your tone, you have to vary your pitch and your tempo. And you have to sound really high, and you can have to sound really low too. And it's that like oscillation and that going up and down in your tempo. That's what makes people listen. The next thing you also want to focus on is your speed. People, when it's their first time to speak in public, they often tend to speak really fast. Like they always tend to talk like this and this and this and this and this and this, and they talk about this and this and this and that and that. It gets the speech done, I'll give them that, but it also makes it really hard to understand for your audience, because the audience doesn't have any idea what you just said. It's much better to take your speech slowly, and it's much better to give time for yourself to say the words of your speech properly and with the tone that I said earlier, and not have to rush through it, and then you have to worry that your audience might not have understood everything that you said. Lastly, you might also want to practice your memorization of the speech. Like for example, if you were talking in a real public speaking scenario, you wouldn't have your paper, you wouldn't have your index cards in front of you. So as much as possible, learn not to rely on those things. Learn to memorize those things in your head, because the more of it you memorize in your head, the more freedom you have to be able to focus on other things like your tone and your tempo. Not only sounds more real, it also sounds more genuine. And when it sounds more genuine, people listen. So that's the talking part sorted. But there's also one other part of public speaking that people pay attention to, and that's your body language. When you're standing and when you're doing public speaking, the last thing people want to see is someone who isn't confident, someone who's barely stammering on their words, someone who's beyond scared to stand in front of an auditorium and talk to everyone. They want to see someone who's confident. They want to see someone who knows what they're talking about and knows how to say it. So to start with, if you were going to be standing on stage, you stand straight like this, and you focus your eyes directly onto an audience member. You don't have to focus towards the entire audience just yet, but I would recommend that you find one face in that audience and then you just focus on him, focus on her. That's to start with. But throughout your speech, don't feel like you're stuck having to look at that one person all the time. You can focus on other people. So like for example, if I was talking, I can focus on you for one point, and then when I make another point, I can focus on you. And then that way, if you focus on multiple people, you have the attention of multiple people, and that way you engage more of your audience when you're talking. And then another thing as well is that when you're standing and public speaking, you also want to take a little bit of a tip that I've learned from a while back. When you stand, you have to have your chest a bit out like this, so you're not slouching, and then you also have to keep your chin down. Because if you don't do this, if you don't have your chest out, then you look like you're slouching. And then when you're slouching, no one really takes you seriously. And if you have your chin up too high, then you look like you're not really talking to the audience. Because for example, I could be talking to that thing over there. That thing doesn't need my attention, you guys do. And then the last thing is, when you're up on stage, and this is one of the more important things that I see people worry about, is that they worry about their nervousness. They worry about their fear of being on stage. Now, believe it or not, I've had this too when I was first starting public speaking. And the way that I've worked through this might sound a bit counterintuitive at first, but it works in the long run. And that's really just to practice. You really have to practice all of these things. You have to practice how to present your speech, you have to practice how you say your speech, and more often than not, you have to practice how you stand in front of an audience when you make your speech. Because although that audience might seem really confusing and they might seem really intimidating at first, you'll get used to it eventually. And then when you start getting used to it, that's when the real public speaking can start happening. That's when you can really start expressing yourself as a person, and that's when you can really start spreading your ideas and start showing them who you are and what you represent in terms of your ideas. So in this video today, we covered the basics of presentation for public speaking, things like your body language and what to say, how you say it, and most importantly, how to get over the fear of public speaking, which is simply to practice and keep on practicing.